Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Kingdom Social Justice Solutions Podcast. I am your host, Shalonda Ajibola, and I am happy. I'm excited about this podcast. It is our goal with this podcast is to provide solutions. Solutions. There's a lot going on in our society. Money is funny. Okay. Inflation is crazy. We just got a lot going on and a lot of changes going on in the world globally. So what I'm hoping today is to bring to you some information that'll kind of help us think a little broader. I said, if we learn anything from COVID-19 is how to pivot. So that's what, and I think how to be agile and how to adapt and change. So I'm hoping what we talk about today, which is Black women in tech. And we have on the show a real life Black queen in tech representing. So we're going to be talking about just her journey. Like, hey, we want to preface this, we don't work for no IT college. We ain't, we're not trying to sign people up for some program. But I feel like the best way to, I guess, share or have a conversation is from your own personal experience. I mean, it doesn't get any more authentic. You can share the ins and outs. It's one thing to talk about what you heard about, another talk about what you're living. So I'm happy to have as a guest on the podcast today, my sister, my real blood sister. Like, she ain't like my line sister, my cousin and all that kind of stuff. Like, she's my real blood sister. You can probably see the resemblance. So, Mrs. Angela Buttram, welcome to the podcast. Yay!
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited. This is like even though I've had a podcast for a long time, but this is like the first time, I guess, like we've been together. But this.
Yes.
So, oh my gosh. So we probably I'm gonna try, because the thing, okay, let me first preface this. Like, me and Angel, like, shared a room together. Like, we shared clothes. Like, our mom dressed us alike when we was little, and then she got bigger than me, so then we could fit in the same.
No, when we were kids, I didn't get bigger to you until high school.
What that's what I'm saying. It's just like, I guess you kept growing and I stopped. I don't know. But
they was trying to make us twins though for some reason. I don't know why.
I know. She was, I guess, trying to keep it simple. So we left like a bunk bed and everything. So please, I'm just saying in advance, we might have a lot of inside jokes and some shared stories. So that's why we may kind of go off into some weirdness. But so let's go back to well, I don't know. I mean, the people gonna have to know. The people gonna have to know. So 19.
How far back? 19 what? How far are we going back?
High school.
Oh, high school. Okay.
So you graduated.
99. Yeah, 99. 99. 99. 99.
It looks so funny when it's blurred. But anyway, so 1999, like, what was you? Okay, so y'all, we went to Grandview High School. This was
Bulldogs.
I'm gonna say Kansas City. I guess repping Kansas City. Go Chiefs. Grandview, Missouri, which is like a suburb out of Kansas City.
Yes.
Bulldogs, but it was a public school. Pretty much public school. So, and I know kind of my experience when I look at my journey, and I was just like, we were just really kind of figuring it out. So so I guess that's my question to you, like high school, graduation, like what was your thinking about a career?
I wasn't even, I feel like when I look back at it now, I feel like I was kind of ill prepared. Mm-hmm. Like I had no plans. Like I really didn't think past high school. Like I wasn't really thinking like college, like nobody, like, so you guys, like Shalonda, and we have an older sister, Joanna. So Joanna would have already been like in college. You were, I think, like in like, you were at Longview, I think probably. And so that was kind of, but it wasn't like our legacy of family wasn't like, oh, we go to this university, right, we have these alma maters and all that stuff. Like that wasn't like ingrained in us. So it wasn't like, like, oh, you're going to grow up and go to this school kind of thing. And I don't even know that he was even really discussed amongst my friends. And it's not like my friend group. It's not like was like, oh guys, we're going to MU or we're going to KU
Right.
or we're going, that just wasn't like a thing. Like people were like, I remember our cousin Tiffany, like her and Aunt Didi were like, they would like fill out scholarships like all the time. And they put
Oh,
like a lot of work into like
right.
doing that stuff. And I put like, I think my problem growing up, it was I always had a lack of effort, right? So if anything
Okay.
that required a lot of effort, I was like, not for me. But so I would put like a little bit of time into it, but if it was gonna like take more time than I, really wanted to, then I would kind of abandon it.
Right.
And so college just really honestly wasn't high on my list, I guess.
Okay.
And if it wasn't going to, and I did some scholarship things, but they weren't like full ride scholarships. And I kind of had this I don't know, something where it was like, if it's not a full ride, I don't want to do it. Does that make
Okay.
sense? So like
Right.
the
Right.
whole the whole idea of because like that's what Tiffany was doing. Like they were compiling like a bunch of different
Yeah.
scholarships.
Right.
And I'm like, I just did not have the time and energy to be like doing that much work to try to
Mhm.
do that.
Right.
Um and so I was looking for one and done kind of places. Like
Right.
I filled out some applications and stuff like that, but I didn't get scholarships. So I was just like, okay, no thanks. I'm not gonna
Right.
like, and then honestly, like our parents weren't like, we're gonna pay for you to go to school.
Oh
Like that
no,
wasn't
we didn't have it like that.
you were literally on your own. It was like, you better fill out that FAFSA and you better do all that stuff. And I was like, eh. And then there was a time where I was even thinking about going into like ministry. Like remember I
Okay.
had like um
All
I had
right.
filled out, yeah, Oral Roberts.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
girl, I had gotten like uh um I had gotten like a dorm assignment. I had gotten like
Oh
a
wow.
roommate and everything. Like I had gotten sight unseen, had never been there, but like had gotten so far into getting all that stuff. But like, and I could have gotten like I got like some kind of grant and I got some kind of like loan,
Mhm.
but in order to like pay for it all,
Right.
mom and daddy would have had to have taken out a like a parent loan
Right.
and they were like,
Parent plus.
hard pass. And so and so that's really put
I
the
got
kibosh on that. And I was like, okay, well then I guess I will just go to work. And that's what I did.
yeah.
I just went to work. And because you and Joanna had Shalonda was you were um
Right.
you
It's always in
you were
school.
collecting certificates and degrees like it was candy, just picking it up. Oh, I'll take a degree here and I'll go a degree here. So we was going to Shalonda's graduation every other week. And and then Joanna had, gone and did the graduation stuff. And so I was just kind of just there. I was just kind of like working.
Right.
And so I had started out of high school working. While I was in high school, I worked at Kmart, and then when I graduated from high school, I did like this job. Um, what do they call it? It was like a job share thing, or not a job share. It was like a
And still in high school where you went to
no. I was
oh,
out of high
okay.
school by then, but it was like Ebony's the one to hit me up to it. It was
Oh,
basically
okay.
where you would go and do all your resume and stuff there, and they would try to do job placement for you, and they
Oh,
worked with the people. What was that
like a
place
temp
called?
agency? A temp
It wasn't a temp agency. It was over
job
there off of
placement?
Longview. Yeah, it was like a job. But
A
it was
job
supposed to be for like I can't remember what it's called, but it was like works or who could say. But anyway, basically I worked for American Family Insurance. I worked for an insurance
yeah.
agent, and
Gotcha.
that's how he basically had it where he paid a certain amount, but then the job um core or whatever it was paid a certain amount also. So he was
Okay.
able to get the work with only having to pay
So
almost like Section
lower
8 in a
fee.
sense. Yes. And so I did that, and I also still worked at Kmart. So I would work um at Kmart from like 6 a.m. to like 12
Okay.
p.m.
Okay.
And then I would go work for the insurance office from 1 to like 5, and then I
Okay.
would go back to Kmart
Oh,
from
wow.
6 to close. Yeah. So
Wow.
it was like so it was this kind of so I kind of had like a little bit of the office type,
Mhm.
with that just little short window there, but then was still, working
Yeah.
retail or whatever.
Yeah.
So I knew I didn't want to do that forever, right?
Right.
So Joanna, think at the time, was already working at DST Systems,
Okay.
which is where I've been for a long time. But so our older sister
So
Joanna.
I'm sorry not to cut you out, but what can you kind of tell us for people that don't know what DST or like what is that company and
So DST Systems is or was a company in the Kansas City area that it started off as Data Assistance was what it was called. But basically, it's a transfer agency, and all that really means is that they contract with all these different other financial companies, mainly mutual funds, but then
right?
also we have a lot of clients that are brokerage firms and things like that. So all of their record keeping, like their financial systems, the money movement,
Okay.
statements, all of that stuff. Some people use us as a full service client, and then some people just use us as they just basically use our technology,
Okay.
and then some kind of do like a hybrid type thing. But basically, yeah, mutual fund companies. Um, Working a lot with like the stock market and with trading and things like that, NSCC, all that stuff. It's basically, there's just people who just contract that stuff out
Right.
to us. We're one of the top leading transfer agencies in the country, one of the top three. And so it was called DST at the time. We actually got bought out. It's probably been about 5 years
Okay.
by what's called SNC Technology. So that's kind of our parent company out in Connecticut. And so we still are doing, so we're basically like a subsidiary of that larger parent company.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so I started out working. So Joanna kind of told me about that position. So they had like so in our for our clients that use us as a full service, that means that not only do they use our technology, but they also use like our call center, right?
Okay.
And so that's how I got on board with the company. I got hired in as a call center rep. So people would call into, I think at the time it was Chase Vista or something like that was our client,
Okay.
or it was the client that I worked for. So they would call in asking about, whatever questions they had about their Chase Vista account. And then we would answer those questions. So I started working there. Gosh, this was like 2000, I want to say. I feel
Mhm.
like yeah, it was like
Yeah,
2000.
yeah, before you-
And started working there. I did that for about 4 years. And like I said, I think Joanna had already gotten her bachelor's. She was already working. You were probably on your third or fourth degree. I'm not quite sure. They they was But basically that was a thing. Like you guys were graduating, you guys were like in your careers, you were doing these things, and I was working as a phone rep, like at this company that I was like, this is not, like, I don't have like a direction for my life.
Right.
And so I remember talking to our dad one time, um, and he was like, and I was just, just telling him this. I was like, I don't want to be doing this forever. Like, I want a career. I don't want to be on the phones with all these rude people like every day. Like, I'm not
Right.
getting any joy out of this. And he
Mhm.
was like, well, what do you like to do? Like, what are you into? And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I like tinkering around with computers. I kind of like technology type stuff or whatever. But I was like, I don't really know, honestly.
Right.
And so we talked about it, we prayed about it, and literally that next day, I got an email,
Mhm.
which I had gotten the email, but I didn't pay attention to it. So I had gotten the email before, but I didn't like read it or pay attention to what it was until that next day. After I just talked to my dad, and it was an email about, hey, if you're interested in learning programming languages, if you're interested in being a programmer, come to this like information, like meeting we're having about becoming a programmer. It
Okay.
was like they had a couple meetings, and this was
Okay.
the last meeting that they were going to have, like
Wow.
that next day. So I went to that, and of course, get home, told dad, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, we just talked about this. I'm like, I'm going to this meeting. You're talking about how you can become a programmer and all this stuff. So what it was, our company, they had a program where you had to pass, you had to take a test, you had to take a aptitude test, where basically
Mm.
it's measuring not, how smart you are, but basically how you think. Like
Right.
if you can think logically, if you can think, in a way that you can like come up with a solution or like solve things logically,
Right.
then they would assume that you would be good as a programmer. So you had to pass this test. It was basically pass fail. You had to get an interview in front of a panel, and then they were taking like 20 people, I think, and then you had to go through um, like 6 months of training, and then they would place you in a group. And so I took this test, which I hadn't done any type of. I took this test, wasn't sure if I was gonna. I didn't even finish the test, honestly. I didn't finish the test, but ended up passing.
Okay.
When and then found out that people had been every time this would go around, because I guess they did this every few years or something like that, and
Okay.
then found out that people had been trying to take this test for like years
Multiple.
and not passing the
Wow.
test. And
Wow.
so so when I'm like with my phone rep folks, and they're like, and there's like the supervisor over here who is, it's like his third time trying to take the test, and he still hadn't passed it. And I was just finding out about this, take the test and pass it on my first time. And so then um like I said, it was like, I think it was like 180 of us or so
Oh
who
wow.
were
Okay.
being interviewed. Only
Mhm.
20 were going past. So
Ah,
got one of the 20 slots.
wow.
And then it was the first 3 months of the training. Were basically 19 weekends, right? So you were still in your current position.
Okay.
So I'm still on the phone, I'm still as a phone rep, but nights, and we would have classes. Like from 6 to 10, and then we would have Saturday classes.
Okay.
And so they taught us COBOL. COBOL is it's an older language. It's
Right.
for like mainframe systems.
Mhm.
It's really kind of for more like heavy lifting data type things. And so we learned, that's what they did. They taught us COBOL. They taught us other like tools like JCL and SQL and sort of things like that. And so once you um graduated or passed the test, you had to like code a program. You had to do another like all day like test as well to pass that. If you pass that, then you would move on to the next 3 months, which where the training was actually during the day. So you left your current
Position.
position,
Okay.
and your work day was being in class. If you did not pass that piece, it was not guaranteed that you had a job to go back to.
Okay.
There were other people who didn't pass that second part, and their job was no longer there, so they were pretty
Mm,
much no longer with the company.
right.
Um, it was a tough time for me during that time because I had been out of school for a while. I
Mhm.
hadn't been used to kind of the classroom, hadn't been used to like working that part of my brain where I'm taking in a lot
Right.
of information and trying to, process it and immediately, you have use it applicably. And so it was kind of a tough time. I relied on God a lot. I'm like, I'm praying. I'm like,
Mm,
God, help me
mm,
get through this. This is all kind of overwhelming. And honestly, I really felt like God, like he just really kind of showed up in that moment for me. And just like I'm always still grateful to be able to do what I do, be where I am, be sitting next to people who still have college debt and be
oh,
doing the same exact thing, and I got like
yes.
all of this training for free, you know. And so yeah, got through that piece, um, and then was placed into a group, and I've been programming for, gosh, it's been about 20 years now.
Yeah.
And this was, I'm forever grateful to my company for having a program. They don't do it anymore. They haven't done it for the last 10 years.
Mhm.
But I'm definitely grateful for this program that they had that they basically, they taught us this and gave us a career. I
Right.
went from
Right.
being a phone rep to being a program. And then now, of course, now since it's the big move to try to get off the mainframe and move to open systems.
Mm,
Everybody's trying to do things more less expensive and things
right.
like that.
Right.
And so during all this time, picked up many more skills. So learning more open system languages like Java and JavaScript and web-based languages and C sharp and things like that. I work in a support um, group, so we support a lot of different apps. We
Okay.
still support mainframe. Our biggest part of our technology is still on the mainframe,
Okay.
but we have quite a bit of other applications that we just my group that we support that are web applications. And so always learning new tools different because the technology is forever changing. So
Right.
trying to keep up with every time I feel like every time I turn around, they're like, oh, we decided this is a cheaper way to do this. So we're gonna move everything off of CentOS. Now we're gonna move everything on the Alma. And so it's like all these, so it's the training part of it where they used to be really big on teaching people things and training. We had a whole training department. We had
Oh,
a
okay.
technology training department for the
Mhm,
longest time. We
mhm.
no longer have that. It's like, you basically learn it on your own, learn it on the fly, or we will find someone who can. So yeah, it's a lot of it requires a lot of self-paced learning on the job and then what's interesting is like we're all doing it. So
Yeah.
like you'll get on, no one really has this expertise. It's like you get on a call with people who are like, oh, we're this is new for all of us. We're all
Right.
learning. And then
Right.
you finally get it down and then, a month later we're moving on to a different type of technology. So it's like it's very fast paced. It's very but I kind of like that. I've been in a development role where basically you are only you're working on projects, you're developing a project, and for me
Okay.
that gets a little stale. I don't mind it.
Mhm.
I've been in in a conversion role for a long time where you do have a real long project, and you do get to develop, but that's kind of moving and shaking a little more than you would be in like a completely development role where you're always just doing sprints and you're always just enhancing an application. I kind of like the triage kind of, you never know what's going to happen that day, you never
Okay.
know what's going to break, you never,
Yeah.
always trying to basically find solutions, trying to find debug things and things like that. So I kind of like that kind of fast pace.
Mhm.
I think I get bored kind of easily,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that kind of works for my personality. So, and I also like to be able to be involved in a lot of different stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's nice to like when it was just COBOL, that was fine too. But now I get to touch so many different applications, so many
Mhm.
different languages. I feel like I'm always learning another piece of something, and so that kind of breaks up the monotony. So yeah, that's what I do. We're actually the last 2 years or so, we're moving quite a bit into what's called RPA, which is robotic process automation. It's basically
Ah,
just automating just what kind of the day-to-day type work. We're just doing things with scripts as opposed to anything that's you're doing manually. We have we'll spin up these virtual machines and we have like a multiple, each virtual machine is what they consider a bot, and so you
okay.
have multiple bots doing this work that normally a group of humans would do. So I've been doing a lot of that lately as well.
Okay. Well, I like how you because of course I'm learning there's some new stuff in this story I haven't heard. But with all that just I mean, like you said, just the amazing hand of God in that.
Oh yeah.
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 Um, you know, first and foremost, training and getting good training that's going to actually, because that's the thing too, getting training, but training that's giving you the help, basically launched you into a career. You know,
Right.
a lot of training sometimes they're just like, okay, here's this one little program and we just need to train you out because we need to get this done. But they're
Yeah.
like training you, like we're training you for a future career. And it's like them, that thank God for the mindset. And I can say, I don't know if they're still, maybe our intake and maybe tech does have that aspect where they feel like this is something worth investing, willing to take the risk to invest in people
Right.
because we need people that, can get this done. Um, with that aspect with them, investing, of course, using the vetting system by, the
Yeah.
testing, whatever. But
Right.
I
Well, and
mean,
the
yeah.
thing about it is that they were no longer teaching COBOL in colleges anymore.
Ah,
So that was,
okay.
so a lot of kids were coming out of college without
I'm having
without the without having the
mm,
COBOL skill.
okay.
And so that was their thing. It's like, okay, well, we gotta.
Well, we
So
got
they had three different versions of the same program. They had one that was called login were people who had tech degrees
Okay.
but just didn't know COBOL. And then
Okay.
they had one called Launch where they had people who had degrees, not in tech whatsoever, but they would, teach them COBOL. And then what I went through was called Online, where it was people who had no degree, had nothing at all, but
Okay.
just were able to pass this aptitude test. And so then they that's what we're taught. But yeah, not being able to have people coming out of college knowing this skill, they kind of had to take that upon themselves
Well,
and teach it.
yeah, and I wish more, and like I said, it may depend on the industry, but I mean, I don't, and I'm, like I said, once again, I'm not trying to claim to be any type of study
Yeah.
tech and what's on the horizon, but I did read something about Google. Google has a lot of kind of certificates that you can get, and I read an
Mhm.
article that they were almost trying to do away with, like, the degree is not really needed. I think it was like a list of
Yeah.
companies that are saying that, what, we're no longer using that as a criteria, because they're like, it's
Right.
skill based. Do you know how
Yes.
to do this? And like you said,
Right.
the analytical, and that's what that test was testing, is like, are you a problem solver? Because,
Right.
and not, I don't want nobody, we always say that, right? But I mean, and coming from me, who got a bunch of degrees, a lot of it is, can you follow instructions? Read
Yeah.
this. Can you answer the questions? Write this paper. Yeah, you did it. Did you follow instructions? But then when it comes to practical, can you, have you developed the skill set to now you can replicate,
Right.
or you know it deep enough to actually teach it to somebody else?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's crucial. I wanted to ask, so prior, because you were saying we were talking to your dad about, you must say your dad, our dad, talking
Yes.
about,
You
kind
get
of
it.
what were interested in. But I guess, because for me, sometimes, like they say, representation matters, and I know kind
Yes.
of how you know, uh, going into the legal field. Was there anybody that you knew personally that you heard of? What did you
I I didn't know
introduction and
any
all?
programmers. I
Okay.
didn't know any it's different nowadays. And nowadays, in school, kids are hearing about programming. Kids are
Right.
learning how to code. There's all these different places. I think they're called Code Ninja,
Yeah.
where they have all these different, or they'll have like these robotic programs, stuff like that. Not so when we were growing up,
Right.
right? They
Right.
didn't,
Right.
our clubs where you had the math club, you had the chess club, you had the glee club. I don't remember any programming type. Well, and then growing up, what do we have? We had like a old mo- a DOS,
We were
system.
just,
We had
yeah,
Oregon
we
Trail,
had a
you
computer
know.
lab with like the big back.
Yeah,
Yeah. So.
it wasn't so there wasn't much,
Mhm.
and then it was like those programmers, those people who were they were like old white men, who you just
Okay.
never see. They're in a dungeon somewhere,
Right.
and so no, but I didn't know one personally, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
when I saw this email, that's probably why the first time I saw it, I didn't pay any attention to it. And so I was talking to daddy about it. And then so when it kind of popped out at me, and I'm like,
Mm,
oh, well, that's interesting. And then
okay.
still had never heard of COBOL before, didn't know what COBOL was.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
promise you, I was even when I was interviewing for between the panel and they were like asking me questions, I had never heard of COBOL, didn't
Okay.
know anything about it, didn't
Mhm.
really know what programming languages were per se, didn't know really a ton of information about it. I just knew that I was fairly good with figuring things out. I was fairly good like with tinkering with computers and things like that. Don't get me wrong, hardware, software, that's completely different. It's completely
Okay.
different, path, mindset, but technology and the same. I've always been um interested or at least good with technology
Okay.
kind of get that from my dad, right? So but then as I got into it and got to see who all was, what the people look like who are all going down the path I'm going, yeah, very few women, no black people.
Mm.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Especially in my company. So yeah, and really, because at the time I was in my 20s, so not really a lot of young people either.
Right. Right.
So I was always the youngest, the
Mhm.
only girl, the only black person
Mhm.
around these old white men, right? And
Mhm.
so, but that has changed over the years,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's technology and programming, things like that. And you were talking too also about like having degrees and things like that. 100% not needed. You can learn there's a lot of programming that you can learn. There's a lot of things that I learned from Indian people on YouTube. Listen, you
Okay.
find you a good Indian teacher on YouTube, they
Okay.
will teach you anything. Like it's like you don't need to go to college, get a
Okay.
degree to learn these things
Mhm.
because there's so many free ways to get this knowledge and get
Right.
this information.
Right.
So many tutorials, so many there's even so many uh, uh, like free ways to tinker around and play with stuff, look playgrounds, sandboxes, and things like that to learn all these different languages. So it's yeah.
Yeah, there was even a meetup here in Dallas. I would think there'd be other places as well. And I know, well, I said I don't know, but it sounds like Kansas City is really trying to, because I think Google, they just signed some huge deal with them. But I don't know. It's my understanding they're trying to make Kansas City like the Silicon Valley of the Midwest.
Or Google, they well, because you know we got Google. Yeah, they're trying to do that for years. I don't know how long that's or how well that's going, but they had this plan when they introduced Google Fiber that
Okay.
Kansas City would be this kind of hub
Mhm.
for, and they had all this. Yeah, they were that was about 5 6 years ago. They
Right.
still,
Right.
I ain't seen it yet, but we'll
I mean, but the
we'll see.
thing, yeah, the thing is, and we'll probably go to a break here pretty soon, but because what I want to touch on is, like I said at the beginning, that things are changing. COVID, I mean, what did COVID? I had never, like you, I think Joanna, or at least Mama, had worked from home, been able to work from home. I had never been able to work from home until COVID hit. Like that was my first. Whereas some other people have already been doing that,
Mhm.
and so of course now a lot of my jobs have been work from home. Like
Yeah.
COVID changed a lot, and we
Oh yeah.
got AI, got the whole metaverse and all these other things going on. Like it's here. Like
Oh yeah, yeah. We were trying to this yesterday had an issue with a server and we're trying to on a Linux server, which I don't do a ton with Linux servers, but we have to support them. So it's so I was reaching out to a guy. It was toward the end of the night. He had to leave. We were all of us trying to get off the phone, trying to get out of there, and we were trying to figure out what command it was to clear out this log. And so he was like, oh, so he was like, gotta Google it. So he sent me a screenshot of Chat GPT,
oh,
of where he basically asked Chat GPT, like,
man.
what's the command for XYZ? And I was like, because Google is my friend. I'll Google
Mhm.
something in a minute.